Welcome back to the Pittsburgh Sportscast, where two college students discuss all things Pittsburgh sports all year round. I'm Ryan,
And I'm Chris.
and today we will be going over a few trades that have happened in recent memory, one in the hockey world and one in the baseball world. We're going to start things off by talking a little Penguins. Uh, very talked about trade all over the place between the Penguins and the Toronto Maple Leafs, but Kasperi Kapanen, 2014 Penguins first round pick, is coming back. He is coming along with Pontus Aberg and Jesperi Lindgren, and we have also traded our 2020 first round pick Evan Rodriguez, Philippe Hollander, and David Warsofsky. So, initial thoughts from you, Chris?
I think this trade is very complicated. Because I think in Penguins fandom, a lot of people are upset that we gave away another first round draft pick. And in a in a system, not system, in a time where it looks like the Sid and Gino across from Malcolm, depending on what way you like to say it, era is coming to an end. Is when it would make logical sense to begin to maybe save those first round draft picks, maybe put people get new prospects into the system. Jim Rutherford clearly is not a part of that mindset. He clearly wants to go all in. We could argue with the past two Penguins playoff results, which was being swept by the Islanders, and then the gentleman's sweep against the Canadians, that maybe don't go for it, just kind of go with what you have. But Rutherford clearly believes that Sid and Gino and Letang and whoever a goaltender is still has potential to win another Stanley Cup. Kasperi Kapanen, I think he's a good young player. He's a player that I actually wanted. I even think on the last podcast episode I mentioned trying to work out a deal with Toronto for him, because I think it could be helpful in a lot of ways. Is he a top 6 guy? I don't think so. If any of you are familiar with the Steve Dangle podcast, or the Steve Dangle who's a hockey YouTuber who's a huge fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I followed him for several years, and obviously that's where Kasperi Kapanen is coming from. And Steve said he's a great penalty killer. He's ferocious. He's fast. He's gonna dump the puck in. He's gonna get the puck. But he struggle with the top 6 guys, and then you have GM JR who's saying top 6 guy. So that's where I'm cautious. It's like, I wanted Kapanen. Arguably, I wanted him for Matt Murray, because I think Toronto needs goaltending, and I felt like we need bottom 6 help, and even top 6 to an extent. But I think the price. My big thing is the price. I think we pay too much. I don't think Kasperi, even though he was once a first round pick, I don't know if he's going to play a first round role in the NHL, if that makes sense. So paying, not only do we pay the first rounder, I don't think David Warsofsky, really, he's an up and down kind of guy. He's a fringe player. And Evan Rodriguez, really didn't play much for us. I think he was a restricted free agent as well. So that's not a big issue. It's that first round pick. That even if we gave up like a second or a third, I think I'd feel better. But and again, because it was a top 15 pick, and we don't have one next year because it's Minnesota's.
Right.
So now we don't have one this year. We don't have one next year. And I just don't think Kapanen is worth it. Now, Pontus Aberg and Lindgren, Jesper Lindgren, who I believe is a defenseman, Aberg's a centerman, I believe. Again, they both seem fringe players. Kind of what Wasowski and Rodriguez are. So it kind of looks like,
like for like, pretty
yeah.
much.
So French players for French players, and then first rounder for Cappy. I don't know. I don't, because why did we keep the pick? That was so stupid. Because now, no matter what happens, Minnesota has ours. That's so dumb. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
done ranting.
I agree with you on all points. I don't think he was. I do like when you talked on our last podcast. I did feel that Kapanen would be a nice asset to have, particularly as an asset to that third line, which we saw was severely lacking in the Montreal series. Was severely lacking ever since the restart. We saw, and I think he's a real big asset to the third line. But when you look at the first round pick that you gave up, 15th overall pick, you're giving up the chance to draft a guy who could be your top 6 guy in the future. The guy who, we need to find some successors to Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. They're not getting any younger. They're not going to be around forever. We have to start building for the future at some point. If we keep trading these first round picks, we've only, I saw drafted a first rounder, I think twice in the last decade. We've always traded our first round pick away. But what I'm seeing is we keep every year we try to go for it. We try to win now. And yes, we made the postseason every time since 2007. But that's because we got Sid, Gino, and all the guys who are getting older and starting to lose their luster, if you will, or at the very least, won't be around for too much longer. I mean, this is the point right now, and maybe even a year or two earlier, where we have to start thinking about a post Crosby era of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if we aren't careful, if we keep behaving this way, then it's not gonna look pretty.
Well, here's the thing, because I don't necessarily blame them, and that's GMJR and really the previous regime in Shiro and Bylsma, because since this takes a decade, to what's the word? Of trading all the first round draft picks, right? Because most people use the draft to get to where we were with Sid, Gino, Letang, Murray/Fleury, depending on the year, and whatnot. So I don't mind trading all the first round draft picks back then. People making a big deal out of it, but you have to recognize that when you have Sid and Gino in the core, the goal is to win now because you have the talent to win now, right? It's not like you're team, the Minnesota Wild, who don't necessarily have a core, or a team like Florida Panthers, even, who need to get those draft picks, right? At the time, the Penguins could afford to trade all those picks away. Now is where the issue is that there is no succession. And the way GMJR is playing it at the moment is he's just gonna try to win as much as he can, and then it's going to be ugly. That's the reality of the situation. But I think as Penguins fans, because it's going to look like we're going to have a decade plus of success, right? With 3 Stanley Cups at least. Went to another one. So we went to 4. We've won 3. Been in the playoffs every year up until this point. So I think this has been a successful regime. And, inherently, if GMJR truly believes that this core has one more run in them, I think that's all that's left. Maybe one more run. I don't know, because I think this core probably only has 1, maybe 2 more runs left. And I assume GMJR is seeing the same thing that we are. And if he truly believes there's only 1 or 2 more runs, then I could understand the argument built for the future, but I could understand the argument that you still have 2 of the best in the world. Screw the future. Like, if we win another cup, hypothetically, and we make it 4 4 cups in this regime, been to 5. We suck for 35 years. I mean, that's kind of worth 4 cups. Because look at Tampa Bay, who's yet to figure out how to win anything.
Sure.
Right? Look at even Toronto, that
Oh,
young
yeah.
core, right? With what they had, and they can't even get past the first round. So I think I don't mind him going. Because here's another way to look at it, right? With Kasperi Kapanen, did the Penguins get better? I'd argue yes, they did. Did the Leafs get better? I'd argue no, they didn't. They got a first-round draft pick, but again, when we're talking drafts, everything's up in the air. A 15th overall pick could be dynamite, or it could be someone you never heard of and they never make it, right? And they're losing an integral forward for them. So, I think the Penguins did get better. It's just the reality of the situation is that post Crosby and Malkin's gonna be barren for sure, because they're burning the bridges and the prospects for one last chance, maybe 2, depending.
Yeah, I definitely see your point of view. I mean, but I'm just trying to see a future, because if you look at, you're right. If the way we're on right now, we're going to have quite a few years of not so great times for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Because if you look at the early 2000s, Lemieux was still there, but he was older. He came back after not being there for 3 years. His teams that was on in the second Lemieux era, aside from a couple outliers like the Kasparaitis years, they weren't exactly the best years. We got the first overall pick in 2003. We got Fleury, and that whole thing to the lockout, and even the first year of Sid was all it was all not looking great, and that's what we're going to be looking for, at least for the next few years. But I'm trying to think, because I still think that we could have kept that first round pick and got someone like Kapanen. I don't blame you. I mean, Kapanen's gonna make this team better. That's a fact. But it's all about even a first round pick. This isn't like MLB where you have to wait 5 years before you even see time at the top. This is the NHL. It's a first round pick. You can go straight into the league. We've seen how many others do it. Sid himself, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. You name the first round pick, they went straight to the league. And couldn't you have drafted a third line guy instead? Especially because if you draft a 15th overall pick, chances are he's good enough to be on your third line already. But then he has the potential to be a top 6 or even further. So I don't think, like I said, Kapanen makes this team better, yes. But a 15th overall pick could have made this team even better than if we just got Kapanen.
I disagree slightly. No, I agree. Okay. I agree that the first round pick is too high. I think that's consensus. I think Kyle Dubas committed highway robbery with that. But if you look at the players from the NHL draft who immediately go in, they're really only top 5, top 10 dudes, right? When you start getting between that 12 to 20, they need some development the majority of the time. Yes, and in anything, other rarities, of course there are, right? But the majority, when you get past 10, it's really guys who are going to need some time to be developed in the AHL. Now, see, this was so complicated, right? Because we can all agree, as stated before, that this team should not have given away the first-round draft pick. But realistically, the first-round draft pick wasn't going to help us this year. It was going to be kind of what we talked about, maybe a
retool.
Yeah, a retool. Someone to help for the future. But again, it's the same that GMJR, I think, truly believes
One more run.
one more run.
And that's why he
And he's-
overpaid. Yeah.
Yeah. And where was he before? Carolina?
Yeah.
Yes. He drove Carolina into the ground. If you remember that once they had their run, and then he just kind of blew it out.
Pretty much.
Pretty much is what happened. And realistically, it's going to do the exact same thing here. Is that when this Cosmic Malcolm thing is done, this seems to be a dumpster fire. But at that point, I think there's going to be a whole regime change, and then we focus on the rebuild.
I think both of the 06 Cup finalists pretty much went down the same path after they won, because Edmonton, if you look at how Edmonton was, they were absolutely like one of the worst teams in the NHL after that. And they blew the whole thing up. Changed regimes, got all that. Then they got a couple number one overalls. They got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They got Connor McDavid. Obviously, they haven't gotten back to the top yet. Neither has Carolina.
Well, Carolina's a lot closer than Edmonton.
Oh, yeah, but, I mean, Edmonton's made a couple conference finals. They've been there. And, yeah.
I mean, see, Edmonton's different because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, for a first-round pick, I mean...
He was number one overall.
He was number one overall. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't mean first-round draft pick. I meant number one overall. Has kind of been a bust.
A little bit.
Like when I think of Edmonton, yes, they have Connor McDavid. And they have Leon Draisaitl. But I don't think a lot of people are jumping for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Sure.
You know, I think that was kind of a bust on their part. Whether that's just development or what happened with the player.
Yeah, he's a solid guy.
He's a solid
not,
guy.
Like,
He's not worth number one overall, I don't think.
The way McDavid and Sid
and Draisaitl and Gino and Fleury, and we can name all the good ones who, you know, Hall of Famers in a lot of ways. But I think it's clear that he's not done. That GMJR is not done making moves. I think there's a goaltending change that needs to happen. I think he was actually the day before the Kapanen trade. It was rumored that there was going to be a goaltending trade.
Yes.
That Murray was going to get sent somewhere. Which then again you could throw back, was that part of the Toronto deal? Was Murray initially part of it, and it got leaked as, hey, a goaltending trade, and then maybe negotiations broke down a little bit, and ultimately we get the first round draft pick. And those are things that, you know, we don't know, right? But I think goaltending, I think we're gonna look at a trade for that. I still love to see Jack Johnson off this hockey team. Would love to see that.
Wouldn't we all?
I don't know. I just don't think he's done. I don't think he's done.
Yeah, I don't think either. I definitely hope Matt Murray should leave. I mean, Matt Murray. I mean, it's not like I want him gone. You know, it's a very unfortunate situation. But it's like, in hindsight, keeping Fleury was a good move, because without Marc-Andre Fleury on this hockey team, still we don't win the cup in 2017. I'll say it right there. Yes, he kind of became playoff Fleury in the Ottawa series, but he was one of the biggest focal points of the first two rounds and us even getting to that Ottawa series. But at the time being, and now that doesn't change my view on the Murray-Jarry situation. I still think that one of them, and I think it's got to be Matt Murray, but one of them has to go before next offseason, because if they're both still on this hockey team, one of them's going to Seattle for nothing in the expansion draft, the way that Fleury was off to Vegas for nothing in that expansion draft. So I think we do have to get something from Matt Murray, especially because the core, it's a different situation. The core still had numerous runs in him. Like you said, this core only has about 1 or 2 runs left. So I think it's really important that we get something for Matt Murray, or Tristan Jarry, but I think Murray's the one that has to go ultimately. But I definitely think we should trade Matt Murray. I'd even argue that maybe we should try to get another team's first rounder maybe for him.
But for Is Matt Murray okay? That's interesting. This
We could,
discussion.
yeah.
Is Matt Murray worth a first rounder?
Maybe not alone, but maybe if you add someone else in. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, who else do you add in for Matt Murray? I don't know. I'm trying to think of another guy that we could be willing to give up that could be worth a first rounder, but we might just have to get someone else for the third line for him. Because I really like. I was arguing about keeping the first rounder in our
Right.
last podcast or a couple podcasts ago, and you said no, give it to Minnesota. But and we ended up keeping it, and then we traded that pick away, and now I'm kind of forced to eat my words. Hindsight 2020, but I'd much rather have given the pick to Minnesota, and
Yeah.
I would have even been somewhat okay with trading 21's first round pick for Kapanen. I mean, not 20. Yeah.
No, wait.
Yeah, 21.
Oh, if you just gave it to Minnesota.
If you gave 2020 to Minnesota and we kept our 21 first round pick, I'd be okay because chances are we're not going to be 15th overall. We're going to be somewhat lower on the table. And then you get into territory where it's not quite, top 6 tier players where, I mean, obviously that's what you hope for when you draft a first rounder, but it's late first round. And it would all depend on the availability, what kind of prospects they see coming up. But I'd be slightly more okay, maybe a bit frustrated, but not as frustrated as I am with giving up number 15 overall for Kasperi Kapanen.
Well, my whole argument for giving it to Minnesota and keeping the 2021 was in case we sucked.
I don't think that's going to happen. That was my argument with keeping the pick was that we're not going to suck. Because the only reason we are 15th overall and not worse is because because of the whole Rona thing that made it 2014 playoff. I mean, we had to play in round to get in, and we couldn't.
But we didn't look. I mean, when Sid and Gino came back, it's not like we were fantastic.
Oh,
we played our worst hockey.
I was gonna say
towards the end.
We lost to the worst team in the field.
No, I'm talking before Rona.
True.
Like we were not playing well beforehand.
Where we left off.
Right, exactly. Which is why I was concerned. It's because we came in sucking, and then we got beaten by the worst team, who lost in I think 5 to Philly. So and then with being swept by the Islanders, we haven't. There hasn't been a lot of good hockey to be confident.
True.
Because we didn't even have home ice against the Islanders. The Islanders were the higher seed.
Right.
And we had home ice, but then lost. So it's complicated. It's very complicated.
Oh yeah. And to play devil's advocate here, it was almost like I somewhat feel like Jim Rutherford maybe doesn't see the need to have a first round pick because going back to pre-Sid and Gino returning, Sid and everyone else returning, we didn't have Gensel even. Gensel's going to be a big part of this future, hopefully, Lord willing. But all those guys were injured, and these young kids, Marino and everyone else, came up, and they played some serious puck. They looked like the best team in the National Hockey League without our top 3 best players. Essentially, we look like a solid hockey team, and I don't know if Jim Rutherford's looking at that and saying we'll be okay with Sid and Gino gone, and that's maybe why he gave up a first rounder, because he figures we can afford to lose such a thing to go for it, because maybe he thinks the future is just going to be okay as it is. And then there's enough pieces to the future core that he can piece together some assets around that when the time comes. Now, obviously, that's a point of another debate altogether. But this is just, I'm trying to go through the mindset of Jim Rutherford, why he would think that giving up a first round pick for a guy with a ceiling of a third line at this point. Plus, you have to figure that what's his not Aberg, but the other guy,
Lindgren.
Lindgren. He's only 23 years old. He has a better chance of of being an asset to the young core. He's yet to make his NHL debut, but he probably will this year with us. So, like I said, I'm not sure if it's something I agree with, but I'm trying to go into the mind of GMJR because if you look at it on the surface, this is a stupid move, giving up a first round pick for a third liner at best.
Well, I don't think there's rationale. There's never rationale for overpaying. That's just the reality.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's the word. Because even if you want to make that argument that Jim Rutherford for some reason believes that Brandon Tanev and Teddy Bluger and Jared McCann are the future of this hockey team, I think Zach Aston Reese.
Sorry, no.
I think if he's truly believing that, he needs to be kicked. There's just no excuse for paying, because even if you believe that, you can still have a first round pick. Like, teams can always use first round picks. It's not like you're getting Connor McDavid here. You're getting Kasperi Kapanen, who, like I said, is a great penalty killer and a guy I wanted. It's just the price is just too much.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up what I'm thinking. I think pretty much every Penguins fan thinks we overpaid. I know there are quite a few Leafs fans that don't like this trade either. It feels like a lose-lose. Like
why don't the Leafs fans like it?
I don't know. Maybe they don't. I don't think they have confidence in developing a first-round pick. I think they wanted a proven guy, like even a young guy, like if we gave them, say, John Marino. I know. That's what my point is. My point is they probably would feel more comfortable getting a proven prospect instead of someone whose name they don't even know yet. Because if you look at Toronto, like obviously it's not as bad, but I'm getting kind of Pirates vibes with their kind of developing and drafting kind of decision making. Obviously it's not that scale, but I'm just trying to draw similarities here.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, obviously Toronto turned out better. I'm looking at it from a neutral opinion, but it's just kind of perspective from both sides here.
Yeah, and Toronto needs to work. I mean, I guess, because Toronto needs, like, really good defensemen. Because they have no defense whatsoever. They have Morgan Riley and, like, Jake Muzzin sometimes. But he was hurt. Aside from that, they just have, like, a bunch of scrubs. And Toronto has so much offensive talent that, like, Toronto's frustrating because they have so much offensive talent. They should be so much better, but they're not. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. So I guess we can move on to the MLB trade deadline has passed as of 4 p.m. yesterday. And the Pirates were fairly quiet. They only made one trade. And that was Jarrod Dyson to the Chicago White Sox for international slot money.
Which we never even use anyway. It's essentially just money to go in Nutting's pocket is what it is. But yeah, like, we should have done more. Like, we came into the trade deadline, GMs was saying anyone, we'll sell anyone. But I think it comes back to what we were talking about before, where who do other teams even want? Like, this is what we talked about on our last podcast, but I can only see, like, Colin Moran, Eric Gonzalez, who was the other guy? Not Bell, because he's gone on a tear recently. He's starting to show
only batting .216.
Signs of his former self, but keep in mind he was in the 100s before, so recency bias, but he's been looking all right. Not obviously. Yeah, it's just really frustrating. Like, who do you sell? Like,
well, okay, I'll give Ben Cherington this. I'm happy if he couldn't get a good deal. I'm happy he didn't sell anyone.
True.
And here's why. Because I think this team is not as bad as they are playing. If that makes sense. Like, the team's record, I think, is 9-21. I could
22 maybe. I think it was
wait,
9
let me
and
look
21
that.
yesterday, but we can get to specific.
10. We're 10 and 22.
Oh, 10 and 22. My apologies.
Yep.
That extra
Big
win is the
extra
big.
win.
That's what's the separator. Now we're really good. See, but no.
I I believe this team has more talent than what they're playing to.
That's what the regime said last time.
It's true. Well, remember, we were this competitive last year.
In the first half.
And I mean, let's be real. Is Strasburg really a 216 hitter?
No.
Is, Adam Frazier really a 102 hitter or whatever the hell he's batting? Maybe. I think he's better than that.
Yeah, I know.
Brian Reynolds, his wife is pregnant, about to give birth. He's on paternity leave. Okay. Brian Reynolds also hit 323 last year. You know what I'm saying? He's struggled this year. Is it because, I don't know, his wife's 8 months pregnant and he's stuck in a bubble? You know what I'm saying? With a young guy like Brian Reynolds, that can play into it. I think it plays into it. Look at Tuukka Rask in the NHL. His daughter was in the hospital, got sick, and he left the bubble. So with these, we forget a lot of times that these athletes are people too.
True.
So Brian Reynolds could, concerned about the pregnancy with COVID. I mean, granted, we don't have pregnant wives, but if your wife was pregnant in these times, I think you'd be concerned. This is very dangerous and uncertain times, and to have a wife pregnant could be playing into it. Kevin Newman's rounding in the form a little bit. We just called out Brian Hayes and the other dude.
Yeah, that was
Alfred.
As of this recording, we just got the news that he's officially called up now for this coming series. Now that the rosters, I think, have expanded a bit because it is September. I think that was a part of it. But yeah, Brian Hayes, a guy that a lot.
No, because 2 guys are getting sent down.
Oh, okay. So I guess they're not doing
it's a swap for swap. Yeah, 2 guys are getting sent down.
Okay, but that's really nice to see Brian Hayes. He's a guy. He's probably a more highly touted prospect. I don't know.
What's his name? Okay, that's not the point. The point is, that I'm happy he didn't sell a player and not
just for the sake of selling.
Just for the sake of selling and not getting something worth value. Because I think the team is better than what it's playing. Are they a playoff team? Probably not. But I think they may be a hovering around 500 team. If because remember we've been off a lot, right? Because of the COVID-19 situation in Cincinnati and St. Louis.
Rainouts, stuff happens.
And stuff happens, right? So I think, with such a shortened season already, and, the Pirates not playing a whole bunch, that could be a reason why the offense sucks. The pitching's still a joke. There's no excuse for that. I can't defend that.
No.
The pitching's just awful. But yeah, I think the only, rumored trade was, Toronto. Again, Toronto. Pittsburgh and Toronto apparently really working on some deals here. Toronto was close to having a deal for Joe Musgrove, but things fell through. But aside from that, it seemed pretty quiet on the Pirate trade front.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Because I think that's something. The previous regime would have done. Sell for the sake of selling, just to say, hey, look here. Let us build for the future as we sell all of our stars for 30-year-olds who can barely cut it on a major league roster. See, look, future. And I think that is the previous 3 regimes. That's what set us in the rut that we were, that 20-year rut that we were in. I do feel more confident that. Even as Huntington was ending his regime, before Felipe was outed as a pedophile, he was really hesitant to give him up unless he got what he wanted. We were looking for some top A-level prospects, not single A, like A as in A+ level prospects from the Los Angeles Dodgers and their big farm system that they have for the best closer in the game at that point. Arguably, and LA said we're not willing to offer you that, so we said fine, go choke playoff games, we'll keep them. Obviously, hindsight, we should have made a deal, but we had no idea that Felipe was a pedophile and gonna go to jail. But the point was, like, at least at the tail end of the Huntington regime, we realized that you can't just sell a player at all costs. You have to make sure that you're getting what he's worth. Unless he's going to be a free agent and then you lose him for absolutely nothing, but that's a completely different deal.
Well, Felipe wasn't that. And very rarely do you have this situation. Like, there's only one player, and that's Kieran Lakoa, who's on the Pirates who's in that situation.
And he's hurt, so what are you going to do?
And he's hurt, so no one's going to pay for him anyway. Again, the Pirates either have to do something in free agency, which our wonderful owner refuses to do. I mean, it looks like we'll get the first overall pick.
Maybe.
But then again,
Angels.
The Angels
Don't
sucks.
sleep on the Angels. I have no idea how they're this bad, but Mike Trout, the greatest player potentially of all time, is not enough.
And you have to remember too, with COVID-19, a lot of the young guys' development has been stopped because minor leagues couldn't support and test enough to keep them safe.
Oh, yeah.
So even when you're a team like the Pirates and you're focusing on hopefully some young talent, which granted we don't even have a lot of, but the young talent that we do have is going to take even longer to try to get here because they don't have they're missing an entire year of development because COVID-19 refuses to go away.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yep, I think we're both on the same page here. Yeah, there's a lot of jokes about this team and this season. It's just really frustrating, especially when you just see like 10-22. It's I'm excited to see Ke'Bryan Hayes. Hopefully he has a really good debut and makes a good impression of himself.
Where do you play him?
Probably third base.
Okay, so what do you do with Moran?
Move him to first base, and then Bell's the DH, or make Moran the DH and put Bell at first. Or if you desire throwing areas.
And what do you do with Will Craig? Because he's played Major League games this season, so you think he's probably not ready for this year, but next year you would think that he's up too.
This is another issue. See what I mean? I've been saying it for over a year, but Josh Bell, obviously.
Well, is Will Craig better than Josh Bell?
Not now, but there's no point in having Josh Bell when he will have no influence on making this team potential playoff contenders.
And will Craig really?
There's a better chance because he'll be here for potentially 5 to 10 years when this team could potentially be in better shape than it is right now. Josh Bell, it's like Ralph Kiner, right? This is obviously none of us were alive. I mean, maybe some of you were alive when Ralph Kiner played for the Pirates. I know we sure weren't.
Well, you'd be like 113.
Yeah, no, well, he played in the 40s. But Ralph Kiner was famously traded in the prime of his career. He was doing great things for the Pirates, and the guy that they got for him, obviously wasn't as good as Kiner, but he was a young guy. But they always said, if we can lose with you, we can lose without you. And that's what they told him when he's like, why did I get traded? And that's what they told him. We lose with you, we lose without you. For now, especially if we want to get that better draft pick.
But then again, we're going back to the argument, because forgive me if I'm mistaken, because I'm not a Ralph Kiner expert, but I don't think the guy we got was integral in the 1960 World Series, which was the next time we won in 20 years.
But my point is, what's the point of keeping Josh Bell on this team?
Well, what's the point if you're not going to get his value?
It's better than just letting him play on a losing team for years and getting him for nothing.
We're going to do the Jason Bay thing again and get Brandon Moss and Andy LaRoche? I mean, Josh Bell at least sells tickets and sells... Okay, granted, no one's in the stands. But hypothetically, if we come back next year and Josh Bell at least sells tickets, nothing. We need this organization, and bottom line, needs money. We need a star. We don't have one. You remove Josh Bell from this team, because remember, there's a lot of hype around Ke'Bryan Hayes, and maybe he turns into the next Andrew McCutchen, except he plays third base.
Maybe.
Or maybe he doesn't.
Maybe Will Craig, but who knows?
But we don't know that, right? We're playing games in the future.
Well, they didn't know this when they traded Nate McLeod, because this is the same thing that happened.
Yeah, but we got value, though, is my point.
But all right, fine, we got Charlie Morton. Yeah, he was like a number 3 guy.
And if we didn't misdevelop, he nearly turned into a Cy Young guy.
He did,
remember,
back in
that
Houston.
Nate McLeod trade we got. Did we get McCutchen that trade?
No, that's the point. McCutchen was in the minor league. This is the exact same situation with because Nate McLeod was our star player, right? At that point.
Yes.
Nate McLeod, we traded that star player. We got the guy we got back, the best guy we got back was Charlie Morton. I think we got Jeff Locke.
I mean, he was good for like a year.
Half a year. The
That
only reason he was a 2013 All-Star is because he had a good first half, then he made the All-Star game,
And then he forgot how to play.
and then he forgot how to play baseball. He didn't play in any of the playoff games that we played. But the point is that how do you know? Like, they didn't know Andrew McCutchen was gonna. I mean, obviously, maybe they did.
But he was the first overall pick.
He wasn't first overall, but he was.
Oh, no, that was Garrett Cole. But he was high. He was top 5.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like, so is Ke'Bryan Hayes.
I'm not arguing Ke'Bryan Hayes.
Or Will Craig, or
Will Craig's not top 5.
No, he's not top 5. But Ke'Bryan Hayes, like, he has kind of the same hype McCutchen had, pretty much at the same level.
But that's a different position. We can have Ke'Bryan Hayes and Josh Bell. There's no argument. I mean,
sure.
It's not like someone is coming to you and says, you have to pick one because they play the same position. They don't. Ke'Bryan Hayes is over in third base. Josh is either DH or first. You know what I'm saying? So you can have both. The argument is making room for Will Craig, which I'm saying Josh Bell at least has potential to be he is an all-star.
Yeah.
He has it on that record. You can never take that away from him.
Sure.
Yes, he struggled this season, but he's shown that he can put months and bats together. Well, Will Craig isn't an Andrew McCutchen hype. Andrew McCutchen, like I said, is a top 5 guy who was MVP-esque. Granted, could Will Craig become an MVP? Sure. Maybe, but he's not that top 5 guy that we're moving Nate McLeod out for to put Andrew McCutchen in. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I still think, particularly at the deadline in 18 or 19, I mean, I still think we should have. I still think we should have moved him back then, because Then
we get into that same argument. We were competitive though, because then you just shoot the season in the foot.
True.
Because at that point we were still competitive. So if you trade him away, and then you really already pissed off fan base gets more angry because they're like, we were in it for a little bit, and then you traded away the best dude. Like, what the hell's going on? Like, maybe you get to trade, but the majority of fans out there are screaming.
Oh no, like they don't get anything. Like, it's really a lose-lose. Although
right,
like a lot of fans like you can't be pleased. Like, I mean, I remember the Chris Archer trade, right? We were on the heels of a 10-game win streak, right? We were looking like all guns a-blazing, let's go make a run and win this thing. But I still remember there were people complaining and they ended up being right, that they saw that, maybe it wasn't worth getting rid of Austin Meadows for Chris Archer and like that. But my point is that no matter what, someone's going to get pissed off at something.
Oh, agreed. But I think you have to do
management
of who's pissed off.
Yeah, true.
Right, you want to take as little people off, and trading Josh Bell in that situation would have angered 99% of the fan base. You and maybe Joe down the street would have been happy. But that's about
Same thing. I will say this, like, yes, the Pirates internally saw Andrew McCutchen as a top 5 prospect. Yes. But I don't know how many fans, because if you ask any fan back in 2009 what they thought of the Nate McLeod trade, they'd be like, what the heck are we doing?
Yes, agreed. But I think... What do I think? But there was more of a given entity when we traded for McCutchen. Like, there was an actual plan because we had a core that was coming up. Right? Where there isn't really a core right now, and then if you're just going to trade Josh Bell for sticks and stones, more or less, or again, as we've said in this podcast, trade him to trade him, you can't do that. That's stupid.
Nah.
Because he could still turn it on. Moran could turn it on. And this kid, Brian Hayes, becomes functional, let's say. Okay, Brian Reynolds goes back into form because his wife has the kid and now he doesn't have to worry. Probably we have a new... Apparently Cole Tucker can play the outfield to replace somebody.
I'm probably looking at Newman.
Right? So, there's an argument to be made. Like, again, if we take it from the point that this core isn't as bad as we're saying it, there's just extenuating circumstances, then trading Josh Bell is not the smartest decision until he's high again. Now, let's say next year he goes off for the first half and bats like 300 with like 20 home runs or something, and the team is 27 games under 500. Then you trade him because he's worth his value now, and you can get something, and your team's out of it. But it's a hard ask to trade your star when you're in it.
At a low point, yeah.
Because remember, when we traded Nate McClath, the team sucks.
True.
Like, there was no hope of the playoffs.
Right.
But at that 2018 point, there was hope, and you couldn't have traded him then. You can't trade your star when you're in the playoff contention.
That I do agree with. I think we're on the same page there. But yeah, I think we should. And I don't think we should have traded him this year because he's not having a good season.
Right.
We wouldn't get
and then it would be the trade of, hey, we're just trading someone to trade someone. And when you're trying to rebuild, which is clearly what this organization, even though they're not saying it, is what they're trying to do, then you need to trade with a purpose. Right, which is what Huntington didn't do. Where he didn't trade with a purpose. We need to trade with a purpose now. And with the way Ben Cherington treated his deadline, at least there are signs that he's willing to trade for purposes and not just trade to trade.
I think so. I think that other teams are learning startup because I think the reason that he didn't make any moves this offseason, nor did he make any moves at the deadline. I think the main reasoning behind that is other teams still assume that the Pirates are going to be gullible and take the bait and get because these other teams, they know what the Pirates have historically given up. They've talked to Huntington, Littlefield, Bonifay for the last 25, 30 years. And they figure, well, here comes this new guy. Let's just do that again. And he's not budging.
Well, I mean, he did trade Marte.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But other than Marte, he didn't trade anyone else. He didn't trade Josh Bell because that would have been the time. Would have been a good time to trade him because, see, at that point we sucked and we were openly looking to rebuild. And it was a point where Josh Bell was still looking good, and we were in a bad spot because the season was over, and you saw how it was. It was terrible. But he didn't because he probably didn't get what his value was, or at least what his approximated value is, because like I said, I think it's going to take a time, and I hope that by the time this offseason rolls around, teams realize that we're not going to be pushovers anymore. We're not just going to take your first offer for anyone just to get him off this team and free up payroll and stuff like that just so we can trot out a not quite competent roster. If teams start learning that, and when teams start learning that, that's when I think the dominoes will start to fall, and we'll start seeing this thing start to blow up.
See, but then we run into issues. Is our pitching so bad, that if you begin to trade away offensive pieces, whether we do or don't, it'll be even worse. We were 10-22. If we traded away Brian Reynolds, Josh Bell, like Colin Moran, we wouldn't win again. Well,
keep in mind that this, like the reasons you all said for why we're 10-22, we, like you said, Ryan Reynolds' girlfriend's pregnant or wife pregnant. There's all this stuff going on. Kevin Newman's.
Well, he's Kevin Newman's eating up.
Yeah, he's eating up. I mean, I'm trying to think of other players that. There's been stuff that goes on. The season's been stop and start a bit, so we can almost call this a bit of an outlier.
I think that we need. I'm interested to see how our new regime handles the offseason. I'm interested to see, assuming things go back to normal next year, and next season we get a full or somewhat
162.
162, even like 140 or something.
Yeah.
How the team reacts then. If the team continues to struggle, then like if Brad Mills continues to hit like 205, and Josh Bell is only hitting 216, and Kevin Newman gets off to a slow start, and Adam Frazier's still incompetent.
At that point, you just
At that point, then I think you just hit the self grenade button, that self destruct button, and then you're like
in real trouble.
Potentially one of the worst teams of all time.
Right, but if you look at I don't even think we should take into consideration like how bad we are. Because if you look at the Houston Astros again, cheating aside, from 2006 or so, not 2006, like the late 2000s to the early 2010s, they were legitimately the worst team in the history of the game. They lost like 110 plus games. They couldn't even win 50. They won 40 something games.
Yeah.
And they did not look like they belonged on a Major League Baseball field, but they were open with the fans that this is just a process. We know that we're sucking now, but it's going to get better because we have this plan in place. Like the Sixers. I know it's another sport, but it's just that kind of issue.
No, I agree, but my point is you don't have to be that bad. Like, you can get the first overall pick and win more than 47 games, which the Astros couldn't do.
But you were saying that we at least have to have some confidence out there.
Well, dude, if I'm gonna sit down and watch 162 games for a podcast and to constantly react and give my thoughts, then I want to, even if we suck, watch some form talent. If next year I gotta watch a 47-win team and constantly come over here and say, "Oh my word, what are we doing to ourselves?" I'm miserable.
Well, how do you think? I've luckily only been aware of Pittsburgh Pirates baseball existing for like the last 7 to 8 years of the infamous streak. So I guess that's kind of what people who were alive, like who barely remember the Sid Bream incident and then had to grow up through those 20 years of struggling and angst and all that. That's kind of what they had to go through. Obviously, as a collective, we all hope that that's not going to happen again. But yeah, I think it's going to be tough to watch at times. If
you know, that's the other thing. Now I'm gonna rant. Way to go, Ryan. Is why won't the regime come out and say this is a rebuild? They refuse. Derek Shelton repeatedly on the 93.7 fan interviews say, "Oh no, we're going out to win every game. We're trying to make the playoffs. We're trying to be competitive." And this is what trying to make the playoffs is like 10-22. It's a joke. It's a joke. And this is what trying to make the playoffs is.
I agree with you there. Like that's what I was talking about. That's why it was bearable. That's what I think the difference is between watching the Pirates win 45, 48 games and watching the Astros win 48 games and watching the Sixers win like 15 games. If you're an NBA fan,
or Detroit.
Both of those teams were very open to their fan bases. Like, you know, the Sixers made a whole hashtag out of it. Trust the process, right? They were very open about, you know, we realize that we suck. We're going to be upfront about it. We suck. But it's all part of a plan, and stick with us because in 4 or 5 years, when we are lifting trophies, hopefully without cheating,
but that's my point. Be honest with us. Like
that's the thing. There's no transparency. Right. There's never been. That is the biggest, I think, gripe with the Pittsburgh Pirates in general. Through that whole 20-year streak, instead of being honest and saying this is rebuild, we are going through this process and we are trying to become good. Maybe not now, but in a few years. Every year for 20 years. And then now, after those 3 years of outlier, every year they said, we are set out to win right now. And we are trying to be a contender. And every year they got laughed in their faces. They had 5,000 tickets a game. They had this and that. And see, now you got me on a rant.
We're the Cleveland Browns of baseball. That's the reality of the situation. Except, luckily, we've had some outliers. The Cleveland Browns have yet to figure out.
2003. Ever put
I
that
was
in
6.
that?
I was 6. And they lost in the first round anyway. Tommy Maddox beat
Yeah, Tommy Maddox.
which is a joke. The Cleveland Browns fans said Tommy Maddox beats you.
Oh, see, they all laughed at anyway. But
I think I'd be less upset and less yelling into a microphone if Derek Shelton or Ben Charrington came out today and said, you know what, this is a rebuild. We have a plan. We want to develop the young talent and fix it. Like, you can even make the argument, Brian Hayes should have been up earlier.
Oh yeah. Well, ultimately, I think you gotta kind of cut him some slack for this because it's crazy times, and
we were 4-17.
I know, but I'm just saying,
throw a single A dude out there at that point.
I'm just trying to cut him a little slack because this.
Hey, but since that 4-17, we have a winning record.
Ooh, yeah, we have what? How many stretches of good games we just got?
About to get berated by the Cubs tonight, so that should be fun.
Unless Brian Hayes has something to say about it.
And the other guy.
And the other guy.
This team's good.
So, I think we've had enough ranting for today about trades and whatnot. We hope you liked this podcast. If you did, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Pittsburgh Sports Cast. Click that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Comment below if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You can also interact with us on Twitter at PGH Sports Cast or email us. You can find us at pittsburghsportspodcast@gmail.com. Tell all your friends once again about this podcast. We're available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll see you later on the Pittsburgh Sports Cast. So long, everybody.